You're listening to the 14th source for all geeky and nerdy news and discussion, which means that you're listening to a podcast.
For all intents and purposes.
I am D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And we are your two overeducated, codependent nerd hosts, bringing you the things that we like to talk about, but filtered through inquisitive and critical lenses, in the episode for Friday, November 11th, 2022.
Oh my gosh, it is Veterans Day.
It is.
Which means that I'm probably making bad choices.
Getting free food somewhere?
Eating free food. I always love the idea that every year, I see the list of places that are doing free food, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And I go to one, I eat too much, and I feel sick for the rest of the day. Right.
I just prefer to celebrate Armistice Day.
Well, and that's fair, too. I hate this year. Maybe it happened in the past. I don't know. I got an email from the VA saying, here's who's giving you free food. And I saw that email, and I literally was like, motherfucker, how about just give us, the care, right? Don't tell me where to get a free shitty burger. Just take care of the wounded soldiers.
However, where can I get that free shitty burger?
But also,
before you go, just leave that list on the counter. But fuck you, by the way.
So this country.
Oh boy,
likes to make veterans, but not take care of them.
Indeed. This is apropos of nothing, and this is not a Week in Geek episode, but I just remembered this. I want to talk really quickly about an interesting new game that came out, video game, I should say. The game itself is unremarkable. It's kind of what it is and how they released it. There's a company called Digital Eclipse, which is well known for being the archivists of old video games at this point, right?
Right.
Releasing a lot of those old 8-bit and 16-bit collections, like the Mega Man Legacy Collection and stuff like that. They developed a game for the first, I don't know if it's the first time, but in conjunction with a company called I Am 8-bit, which is actually more like a art collective kind of thing. I Am 8-bit has known for hosting art shows about nostalgia art and stuff like that in LA, and I think I Am 8-bit is actually the developers of the game, and basically they went to Digital Eclipse because they have emulators and
right.
But the thing is this, they had a new game coming out, and it's an NES game, an NES game. They released NES cartridges for their new game. One of the things they did is they released this trailer, but not a trailer for the game. It's a trailer for a documentary that seemed eerily familiar. Because they're talking about this game in sort of vague prospects. They weren't even saying the name of it. It was a game that it went south, it went real bad, it never got released. They took all the copies that were printed and dumped them into an unknown pit somewhere in the desert, right? And they finally found a copy, and now they're going to release it. And the trailer is made very convincingly. But no, it's a brand new game. It's a licensed game made with not just NES style technology, but made with NES technology, in that it plays on an NES. And the license they got is for the Garbage Pail Kids.
What?
Right?
The what?
Yeah, the Garbage Pail Kids. And they released this Garbage Pail Kids game. I forgot even what the title is, Mad Mike and the search for fucking, for gross snot boogers. I don't remember what the name is. It's inconsequential, and the game is fine, but
But Garbage Kid.
Right.
Garbage Pail Kids, oh my gosh.
Right. But they gave the game this Digital Eclipse wrapper to it, which means a bunch of concept art, a bunch of development art, a bunch of the original Garbage Pail Kids art. They even made, digitally, of course, a, reproduced an NES manual for the game. And it's I'm willing to pay $10 to these guys, or $10 or $20, whatever. I'm the effort they put into this thing, it's worth it. I just want to support that kind of journey.
So it's weird because I think about this. I've actually seen other games. I saw one on Kickstarter. It was a computer role-playing game that was developed for the Apple II. Right. And so it was in the style of, but also no, not in the style of, literally you could, one of the, I think they did a Kickstarter, I forget the game, but you could get a disc with the game,
right?
For the 5 of you that still have an Apple II, right?
So we've hit the vinyl of video games, I guess, right?
I guess, right? Like, but weirder because,
right?
Because like one of the things is like, while I like games that are in the style of, I don't actually want, like, I don't want the experience of playing on a Nintendo.
Right. I mean, especially, have you tried plugging like an actual NES or Super Nintendo or PlayStation into an HD TV? It's a
journey.
And if you do just like the straight composite cables, like it looks like ass, right? Even like there is a good way you can buy a bunch of like bits and pieces to plug your shit into and have maybe an HD signal or an upscaling signal to your TV, but it's a journey, and then you have to deal with like controller lag and all that fun stuff, right? Which is why I like the idea that they also released this game for all the major consoles, I believe for Steam as well. And what's also cool is that it has the Digital Eclipse seal of approval on there, which is, it has a rewind button. It has all the options for like, you can have CRT monitor or LCD filters on there or not. You can turn on, or this is actually the thing I like the most. I wish they'd put this in like their Mega Man Legacy collection. Like you have the option to turn off or on like sprite flicker. I'm like, it's cool they made an NES game. I don't need that slowdown bullshit.
Is that something that they didn't have in the Mega Man Legacy collection?
Not that I remember.
I feel like that's actually something they've done, but maybe,
Yeah.
Because I feel like I've seen turn that off before, right? Well, who knows?
It's impossible to find out.
No one will ever know.
No. But it's cool because it's a nice sign that society doesn't suck, which I can't say is true for other nerdy institutions or just cultural institutions at this point. We'd like to give a brief update on something that sucks.
Oh my gosh. Are you talking about Twitter? Because, oh boy.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It sucked for a long time in its own way in various avenues. And it sucks even more.
It's this weird thing that we mentioned it last week. Like the idea that like, do we even tell people to go to Twitter anymore?
Right. Well, let's take the temperature. Are you still on Twitter?
I mean, I'm still there, like watching the fire. I mean, so like they say, like, oh, advertisers are pulling out of Twitter. Gosh, I wonder why. And then you see just today a Twitter verified that said Nintendo of America had a picture of Mario flipping off the camera, right? And someone said like, oh, Mario wouldn't do that. Like, well, I guess he did, is actually what the official account replied. Of course, it wasn't the real Nintendo of America, but it like what it's actually done is it's created this idea that if you sell verification, then it doesn't mean anything, right?
Since we last talked, a lot has happened.
I mean, it's
especially around that verification, the blue check mark, right? And we can do a quick recap on there. Basically, once Elon took over, he said, you know what? You're going to have to pay for that verification, $20 a month. And then Stephen King got all butthurt. He's like, how about $8 a month? And like, wow, Stephen King needs to like be on some sort of board or some sort of, on the crest of the wave going forward, because he apparently gets shit done. But still, as of this week, please correct me if I'm wrong, that actual like pay for verification got instituted. Actually,
at least in some contexts, like clearly people are doing it.
Right.
The idea of the blue check or the verified account, which was created with the idea being that people would create fake accounts. And so they want to be able to say,
this is you.
This account is the real one, right?
Right.
For celebrities and for official, for corporate stuff.
Even generally, like in theory, anybody could be verified, but it kind of became mostly for companies and celebrities and stuff like that.
Well, because the idea, I think, was it took work. So you had to be important enough, basically.
Right. And so, it became actually more of a status symbol, which is definitely where Elon Musk is coming from.
Right. So that's what he's selling. Like, oh, it's not just for fancy people anymore. Anyone that pays $8 a month can get it. But what is really highlighted is that, oh, actually, you done fucked it up. Like, it's not doing the thing it actually was supposed to do. It was supposed to tell you this is the real Nintendo of America, not some clown that created a fake account.
Yeah.
And, and it's actually like just this week, it's been a hot mess, right? Like, we've had sports, like literally, LeBron James apparently announcing he's leaving the Lakers. Again, fake account. Okay. Several sports accounts where there's like people create it and it looks real, right? Like, because really what it's done is it said you have to recognize the Twitter name to know if it's real, rather than having a check mark that told you that. It's, literally, big businessman like did the opposite of the intent. Like, he fucked it up.
Elon Musk is really like
an example of why a billionaire is not in fact competent. Yeah,
right. It's like, the way it's been going back and forth and just kind of failing forward. It's like the Benny Hill of social media, like just yakety sax playing and everybody's moving in or like those old Scooby-Doo skits, for lack of a better word, where the ghost is chasing them throughout a building, and it's just a shot of a hallway with a bunch of doors on either side. They run from one door to another, and the ghost is chasing the Scooby Gang, and then they come out another door, but all of a sudden the Scooby Gang is now chasing the ghost, and then it's just like all going back and forth and all complicated, and like it's really a cat chasing its own tail in its own way. And I love the comedy of this tragedy. I mean, it's a tragedy in the classical sense, in that what a classical tragedy is that it's a story where the audience sees the end coming, but the characters do not, right? And like we knew this was going to happen, and it's kind of beautiful seeing it play out in real time. Not to get political, but I'm going to get political real quick. Like, it feels like a more vindicated version of what a lot of people saw or experienced when Donald Trump got elected, where it's like, this is going to be a fucking dumpster fire, except that was not funny. Watching that happen in real time over the course of 4 years. But this is like, you suck, dude. And like, it is funny because I guess it's low consequence.
Well, and I think that's fair to say, but I actually see a lot of people that, have developed communities on Twitter, right? Like, again, for me, mostly in RPG space, where people are actually like concerned because the way they communicated with their fan base, the way that they built a community is now being wrecked by a shitty billionaire with no grasp on reality.
Absolutely. And I will say, for indie art, indie comics, Twitter has been indispensable, for especially if you are above a certain size of reader base. Mm-hmm. And like one of the podcasts I listened to, a show called Comic Lab, basically released an emergency episode this week because they've been touting, like, of all the social media out there, the one you can actually use to build audience and actually build a career is Twitter. And all of a sudden they have to be like, well, what do we do now? And It wasn't like they weren't screaming in panic. They're just like, this is not going to exist soon. We need to talk about and just like brainstorm and think about like, well, and I think this is the case for a lot of communities where like the internet is a fast-paced evolution. Mm-hmm. What's standard now was not standard 10 years ago, right? And the thing is, calamities have happened along the way, and we've always kind of moved from one space to another and grown. Like, do you remember? I remember a time when RSS feeds were just ubiquitous, right? And Google Reader, was that what it was called? It was, and then that just died because Google killed it, right? And remember Flash?
Oh, of course. Like, and it's that kind of stuff happens and always happens.
Right.
It's to watch it happen because what appears to be a $44 billion vanity project.
Absolutely right. And what pleases me is I'm not seeing a lot of there is a level of panic for the different industries or different fields or interests that actually rely on social media as part of their business plan, there is a level of panic there. But what I like, especially for maybe some of the more nerdy stuff, it's like it's actually more of a conversation that's happening. What do we do next? What do we do now? Mm-hmm. Should we just dump it and run? But seeing conversation talking like what is Mastodon actually, or what, right? You know, and it's cool seeing kind of problem solving happen in real time, because I'll be honest, like, yes, I agree. Like Twitter, like I said, it can be a very important tool for running your business as an independent artist, independent comic creator, probably to an extent, you know, tabletop role-playing games, especially any indie scene. But also, I have to say this, like, I think Twitter should go away. I'm ready for the era of Twitter should end. I think the impacts it's had on journalism and just the news cycle in general has been devastating. And I don't see something replacing it right away. So there's a part of me that is maybe a chaos agent here where I'm just like, I would like to see it go away and see things slow down just a little bit for a while. Because the Twitter timeline reactionary sort of ethos is just taking over every news cycle and every news medium. It's been a lot. And I think it kind of peaked with the whole, again, not to get political, but like with the Trump era and how much of a problem that was. And of course, other social media as well. I'm not saying that like Facebook is innocent here, and never say that, right? But Twitter has been an interesting sort of tip of the spear for a lot of this stuff. And I am not going to necessarily miss it when it's gone, but I do understand how important it is to a lot of industries.
Yeah, and for me, I think when I think about, like, especially someone who I don't go to Facebook anymore, and I'll admit Twitter kind of became this thing where I could see stuff, but also just the idea of there are people like, you know, content creators, whatever people that I like, I want to know what's going on. I want to see their thing. And it really is like, oh, then where do you go? And that's the real, like, scary bit. Like, people actually joke, like, oh, are we all going back to newsletters? Right? Like,
maybe. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, the rise of Substack and Medium and, like, yeah, like, honestly, it's already there. I mean, it is still there, and it's more prominent than I even gave it credit for. Like, so, yeah, maybe.
Are we going back to blogs?
Hey, you know what this means, Andrew?
What?
The glorious return of Google Positive.
Well, God, oh boy, Google Plus.
Circles, my friend.
Like, you know what? Like, say what you will, they did something right. It's funny that they lost. I mean, really, the problem is probably
that's just Google, right? They cut and run. Stadia, anybody? Sorry.
So I don't know. It's like someone said that right now being on Twitter is like being on the Titanic, and not just being on it, but like, you know, being on it and, you know, like realizing it's sinking, and, you know, looking at the iceberg and saying, "Hey, your wife left you."
Yeah.
So it is an adventure. I don't know what's going to happen, but again, for me, it's just because one of the things I hate is that a lot of people have been saying, like, we joke about how everyone has Discord now, and like that's becoming this thing where it's like, oh, join our Discord,
right?
And honestly, like, I use Discord a lot for very specific things. You know what I don't want? More Discords, right? Like, I'm to the point where I'm going to start dropping them because I can't, like, they're forums, right? They're forums, which is cool for things I really give a shit about. I don't give a shit about most things.
It's like it's a live feed of a forum, right? Like, I think forums or fora are like more easy to navigate, like the trajectory and history of conversations. Right. Where I just feel like I'm watching a stock market ticker when I open Discord. I have Discord. I am currently on 2 servers, and I'm already overwhelmed. I don't even post to it. I'm just still trying to, like, absorb it. But you bring up an interesting point, like the kind of lack of a viable alternative is an interesting wrinkle to this, because I hear people talking about Discord. I also hear people talking about Reddit, saying like, oh, that's kind of maybe where this world will go.
Which, like, twist.
Yeah. Right.
Wow, we're Reddit's back. Right.
I don't know. I mean, that has its own. I mean, every social media has its own problems. So,
sure. And I'll admit, for role-playing game stuff, I've actually been using Reddit more.
Oh, really?
Well, because the community, like the subreddits that I go to, like for Pathfinder and some other stuff, they're heavily moderated.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's actually like, oh, this is pretty good. Yeah.
Right. Reddit is a complete blind spot for me. I have no idea really even what it is. I thought it was just like a when I first saw it, I thought this is like Stumble Upon, where it's just like you find stuff and then you like it and it goes up in like search results. Basically, I'm like, I don't know how it works. I know students love it, and I have friends that swear by it. It's an absolute black hole of knowledge for me. And
well, again, for me, it's only these very specific. Right. Like, I don't know what Reddit is, broadly, but I know. If I want to, for example, if I want Pathfinder 2nd Edition stuff, they have a Reddit, and it's, again, heavily moderated, and it's good. Like, I get what I want.
Right. So, Twitter, it's an interesting time.
Yep.
Let us know your thoughts, especially for those that use Twitter or have used Twitter, have accounts on Twitter, maybe rely on Twitter. Kind of what are your thoughts? What's your I don't want to say post-mortem because it's still morteming, but it's morteming time.
And I feel like we talk about it, and I feel like next week we're going to be like, oh boy, it's different. And then next week it'll be, oh boy, because it continues to be fluctuating hot mess.
Yeah. So
just oof.
Do you think it's here in a year?
I can't imagine that it will be.
Right.
Like really, we're watching, Brewster's Billions, right? Like, our man Elon has found a way to set $44 billion on fire.
Honestly, that's what he did. Like, Twitter doesn't make money, and he spent $44 billion
right,
on it.
Well, there's this fun story about how so much of this tech shit, like, none of them make money. They're all just like this, I believe in the con game, they call it bezel. Like, well, you're at the point in the con where you've got the money and you don't, the mark doesn't realize that they're being conned. And that so many of these companies, right, they have no viable business model, right? Twitter is definitely one of those companies. And yeah, why did you buy it, right? And pay that much money for it.
Right. And just the way he's managing it is so... I've heard stories, some are verified, some are not, but like bringing in a bunch of engineers from Tesla and then firing a bunch of the coders based on how much code they've written, and then trying to find a bunch of programmers from Twitter, and then apparently trying to hire them back. I'm like, I don't know. It sounds like such a... It's a clusterfuck. It's like it's like now the textbook definition of a clusterfuck that I don't see how it survives. Absolutely.
Look, I'm going to say this. My biggest hope is that culturally America realizes that billionaires are not competent or capable. Like, guys like that, like he has no skills, right? Like he's no competency. He's not good at anything, apparently. So just because you have $1 billion does not mean that you are good at things.
Well, I mean, I would maybe argue, I'm not a defender of Elon Musk by any means. He has capability with engineering. He makes electric cars and shoots rockets into space, right? That's not Twitter. Like, you can't run Twitter like
he doesn't do those things either. That's right.
But he hires people, right? Like, that's the thing. But like, that's the mindset he has, and it's just like, this is not this. You can't apply that kind of approach to Twitter because it's not an engineering problem. It is. But it's a social engineering problem.
He's bad at engineering, right? Like, right. People argue that Tesla and SpaceX are floated on government grants. They're floated on this kind of like people invest in it because they think it's hot. But like, hey man, Tesla almost filed for bankruptcy years ago. Like there's a whole story about that. So like all of his companies are no different, right? It's the same story every time. He's bad at this. He just gets lucky.
He can't run for president, right? He wasn't born here, right? Because I'm seeing a lot of parallels already, and it freaks me out.
Oh, right. Like, well, and unfortunately, America loves con men.
Yeah, apparently.
Like, we really do. We love the con. But we love being
they love
conned.
Swagger, right? It's people love confidence. Well,
no, they don't. They love the appearance of. They love being told they're going to get a good time, right? This is
right. No, that's I stand by it. They love the confidence of confidence men. You know what? When that's what you pay for, that's what you get, and it sucks because those types of people just leave a trail of destruction in their wake,
of tears.
Yeah. Yeah, absolute chaos. He is a chaos agent. Like a troll bought Twitter. Like, of course, it's going to be a fucking disaster.
So anyway, that's Twitter, right? Like,
yeah,
I feel like we're looking into the abyss.
So from one disaster to another, there's something else we could briefly talk about. Disaster's a strong word. I was just being funny.
Mm-hmm. What are you talking about, Dan?
I watched. I don't know if you heard, dear listeners. We finished Next Generation. I think we dedicated an entire episode to it. Maybe last week.
Maybe last week.
We haven't hopped into DS9 yet. We're taking we're taking a little break. We're kind of
after the movie you just watched. You're taking a break,
and then we're so I'm like, you know what though? Like, let's watch the first Next Generation movie or the last original series movie. I don't know. How do you want to parse it? We watched Star Trek Generations, the classic film where culturally the original series cast handed the movie baton to the next generation, and that's what I thought the movie was. It's not that. It's a Next Generation movie, straight up, with maybe a little bit of Kirk at the beginning and the end. It's fine. Part of me was watching it hoping, like, listen, we're gonna have 2 Star Trek episodes in a row. This is gonna be great. We're gonna talk about the nuance and interest and power of generations, and there's not much to talk about. Like, it happened. It's fine.
Yeah, it's I always tell people it's probably one of my least favorite Star Trek movies
on continuous consideration, right? Like its esteem has been lowered over time. The more you think about it, or more you watch it, as you say,
lowered and raised.
Oh yeah.
Well, I say lowered because yes, but then raised because I tried to rewatch Nemesis. No, it's in the world of Star Trek. It's one of these movies where it feels cheap. Like it feels like they just desperately wanted to have this crossover movie. They wanted to have a main character die. They wanted to have the starship blow up. And people have said it like, oh, because in Star Trek 2 and 3, they had a character die and a starship blow up. And those were big movies. So like, yes, give us that. Like it felt less like a movie where the story was driven by story and more by what will put butts in seats.
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't think they made the best decisions about what puts butts in seats either. Like,
sure.
It felt like it was
not. Right.
It felt like it was driven more by excitement than ideas. As a result, it feels like a middle of the road Next Generation episode that's just a bit too long. Right? I mean, it's always cool to see the cast, and they were fine, and Picard was great. He got some emotional depth. Like, he got sad because, I guess, spoilers, right? He his nephew dies, and his brother, and it bums him out, and we get to see Kenna Picard cry, and he does. But generally speaking, like, it's just stuff happens, and the not the gravity, but the consideration, the thoughtfulness, the thing that kept pushing us through the Next Generation, which is just like every episode is kind of about something. And for any flaws, perhaps the absolutely abhorrent episodes from the first that pop up occasionally in the first couple seasons, I can really think of maybe 1 or 2. Even then, like, there's stuff to kind of talk about that I just felt was absent here, and which is interesting considering, like, the patron saint of latter-day Star Trek, Ronald D. Moore, was partially behind this movie as well. I'm like, how did this happen?
Well, that's like, actually, I forget that he was actually the writer, right? When you mentioned it, I was like, oh shit. But it does, and this is why I go back to that idea that the movie wasn't written around an idea of a story. Like there was no story. It was written around the idea of make a movie, right?
Right.
Like where you think any TNG episode generally was like had a thought at the core. The thought of Generations was put these people in a movie together.
God, is that the problem? They abandoned sort of the Roddenberryness of Star Trek, because that was his whole thing. Like he wanted to be. I mean, it's basically an anthology show, right? Originally, and that a lot of those ideas in terms of like making commentary on modern society, like that was kind of his jam. This is not that.
No,
it's about a space ribbon that takes you to Gallifrey. Yeah.
And like I think it's a fair complaint. And actually, what I would argue, and we'll see what you feel as you watch future movies, that First Contact and Insurrection do that better. Like they both have the idea of a concept of a story they want to tell rather than a thing they want to do in a movie.
Right.
Right. Well, and who knows, right? It may very well be that First Contact just said we want to do this in a movie, but it feels like they have a story to tell. Same. And actually, I think with Insurrection as well. Nemesis, I'm now on the fence.
So the next one is First Contact.
Yes.
And that's timey. I'm guessing timey-wimey bullshit because it literally is about.
I mean, you'll find out.
It's about humanity's first contact with Vulcans. Right?
You'll find out.
I know Insurrection is that's the one about the Fountain of Youth, basically, like staying young. I think I've seen that one. I don't remember much about it, but I remember like, it's about a planet where people don't age.
Yes.
Okay. And that's all you'll say about that.
Well, it's like that movie's about relocating, right? Like the idea of forced relocation is really the core of it.
I'm interested. I will say, however, Generations did kind of like be downshifted a bit in our maybe already very enthused progression in Star Trek. We're like, okay, yeah, maybe DS9 is the best way to go next. It's been fun, TNG, but like, you've got some growing to do. Take the weekend off. But I'm excited. Yeah, I'll probably dive into DS9 at some point. We're still enjoying the Lower Decks, almost on season 2 at that point. There's still lots of good Star Trek to watch, so I'm excited.
There is. Yeah. So I think you've got a lot to go. Like you have a lot to absorb. And a lot of good stuff, right?
Right.
But it is just like Generations is this thing where it's like it is the speed bump of like, oof. Like, I was really liking this show and then you gave me this.
It's like they made Star Trek The Next Generation Season 1 the movie. So if you, dear listeners, have any thoughts about the topics we discussed this week, feel free to leave your thoughts as comments on the page for this episode at forallintents.net.
You can also post your comments or engage in conversations with other listeners on our Facebook page.
You can find us on other social media as well, such as Twitter, at least for now, and on Instagram at our respective handles. On Twitter, you can find Andrew at Profound Dark, tweeting about tabletop role-playing game. You can find me at Bethel. You can find us on Instagram, or you can find Andrew at Profound Brick, and me and my work at Bethel Comics.
While you're at our website at forallintents.net, you can also take a look at our YouTube page, which you can get to by clicking on the link in the corner that says YouTube. But also, you may be listening to us on YouTube, in which case you should like and subscribe, or as the kids like to say, ring that bell.
We use 2 tracks of music for our show. One is called Disco Medusae, the other is called District 4. They're both written and performed by Kevin McLeod, the Clan McLeod, immortal swordsman, graph paper enthusiast, and musician extraordinaire.
You can find his music at incompetech.filmmusic.io, and that's all licensed under the Creative Commons 4.0 attribution license. Actually, no, I have to update this. I went looking for his stuff. He's still on incompetech.com. And I'm not sure if like there's a weird fallout, because it used to be you'd go to incompetech.com and it'd redirect you to incompetech.filmmusic.io.
Right.
I don't know if there's some business there. But either way, Incompetech is actually the important part. Or just Google Kevin McLeod. And yeah, good stuff.
Indeed. It's like maybe they kicked him off of service because he started making NFT. If you like the show and like to help us out, the best way to do so would be to subscribe to the show using whichever podcasting service you happen to use. What would help us out even more, though, would be to leave some sort of review. Whether leaving a text review or using the proprietary metric helps spread the word to new potential listeners through the magic of algorithms. I have to tell you about something that I just learned about today, the day of this recording, dear listeners, that I think is incredible. All right,
Andrew. Tell me.
We're watching, and we have watched ever since Netflix acquired the license, Unsolved Mysteries. And they're making new Unsolved Mysteries episodes. And a new season just dropped.
I hate to break it to you, Robert Stack is dead.
And the Matrix died with him, I know that. But
oh shit, that's weird. No, because he was Ultra.
Yeah. Ultra Magnus is dead, and the Matrix died with him.
Oh boy!
So I could actually use that quote appropriately. But we watched an episode tonight. It's from the newest season. It's called Paranormal Rangers. Now that sounds silly, but check this out. It's not about like a missing person or anything like that. Not an ongoing case. They just found these dudes and had them tell their story. And what these two rangers were Navajo Rangers who were, basically the police force on the Navajo reservation on the Four Corners. Apparently, there was enough calls to the Ranger Service about Bigfoot sightings, UFOs, all kinds of ghosts, all this kind of shit. Where the Ranger Service was just like, you know what, you two guys, this is your job now. And it was just their job to go interview and write case files about paranormal sightings, and it was awesome. And literally, because I guess it was the early 90s, because one of the guys, he said when he heard the news, he's like, oh cool, it's like we're the X-Files. I'm like, yeah you are, except I don't think the truth is out there, maybe, but it's fun to find out. It was so cool. So the X-Files are real. It's just two middle-aged dudes on a Navajo res, and so which is actually maybe a better show.
Right.
I want that X-Files reboot. Check out Unsolved Mysteries. If you liked it before, the new stuff is just as good. Albeit minus Robert Stack, but deep fakes and CGI. Maybe we could bring him back. I don't know. Does anybody do a good Robert Stack impression? Probably not.
We'll find out on the next episode of Unsolved Mysteries.
If you have seen any good Robert Stack impressions, please contact unsolved.com. So until you develop a passable Robert Stack impression, dear listeners, I'm D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And for all intents and purposes,
that was a podcast.
No, it's for Asada. Andrew, that's good enough for me.
No, it's for Asada.
A is for Andrew, that's good enough for me.
You can find us on other social medias. You can find us.
Can you? I don't even know.
Yeah, technically. Talk about BBCQ podcast. I'm like, well, BBCQ sounds like a fun time where food is made.
Mo's a blast. Are you recording?
Yeah.
Oh, so you didn't get my erotic dilettantes on your recording?
No.
Oh, we got them.